as soon as you start to feel it, start the process of redesigning. And if you can't do it yourself, which a lot of us can, then find someone who can ask you the right questions and who can help you, because you don't want to wait till you're broken to get help.
Hey guys, on today's podcast episode, we're interviewing Mike Malatesta. He is the host of the podcast called How Did Happen Podcast. He's also the author of his new book, Owner Shift: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. And I was so excited to be interviewing him because something he addresses in his book is something that I think many of my listeners can attest to, and that is, once you've created this dream, once you've built a business based on your vision, and then you get right into it now, things are happening quickly and coming at you fast, and you've created a whole new algorithm for busyness and flow and function and purpose. But man, many of us feel like we've stepped on a runaway train that we can't get off of. So my question to Mike in this interview is, what then? What when you found some success, when your business is actually cranking, but you're just not enjoying it, you're not happy, and you feel like you need to get off? This is something that Mike has gone through. He's built and grown several businesses and sold them and had to pivot and rethink. And I'm fascinated by his book. I've been diving into it a little bit, but the whole idea of being selfish as an entrepreneur and as someone who wants to give back to the community just fascinated me. So I think you're going to absolutely be so interested in his perspective and maybe learn some new mindset shifts on how to look at success and how to look at finding ourselves within that success. So join me in welcoming Mike Malatesta. Hello and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Taryn McCarthy, and today we have with us the one and only Mike Malatesta. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Do I need to call you doctor, or can I just call you Taryn?
Please call me Taryn. Please call me Taryn. I'm so excited to have you on, Mike. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest reasons is because someone we both know, Kevin Palmieri at Next Level University, I'll give him a little shout out. He told me that you are the most humble, uber successful person he's ever met.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Isn't that a great compliment?
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, sure. Thank you, Kevin.
Do you get that a lot?
I don't know. Maybe, sometimes.
It's a very humble response, Mike. But tell us a little bit about yourself, please. Introduce yourself to my audience and tell us who you are and why Kevin told us this phenomenal accolade about you.
Well, sure. So, yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. I started working with Kevin on my podcast production a couple of months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago, and his firm does a fantastic job. And he's coached me as a podcaster too, which, I've been doing this for 3 years. You think to yourself, do I really need a coach? But of course, like everything you want to get better at in life, you need a coach. You need somebody who can give you perspective and insights. And Kevin has done a really nice job doing that for me. So I'm very grateful. I'm an entrepreneur. I guess I identify that way. I started my first business when I was 26. Not on purpose, though. I got fired from a corporate job that I had where I thought, I don't know, maybe I could be the CEO here one day. And it didn't work out. The one day came, but it wasn't the day I was expecting it. It was the day I got fired. And then I was thinking to myself, well, what should I do? And I was going back and forth and back and forth. And what I immediately did is I went and got another job, Taryn, because I thought that's what I needed to do. I need to get back at it. I need to, what do they get up on the horse or whatever. And I did that. And 30 days later, I had to quit that job because I just hated it. And a friend of mine, a person that I worked with at the company I got fired from, his name is Butch Weiss. And I didn't know him very well, Taryn, but a couple months after I got fired, he basically sent a note through another person, because this was like 1992. We didn't really have email, like, regular. Um, anyway, Butch said, "Hey, Mike, if you're thinking about starting a business, I would love to talk to you about it and maybe be your partner." And I thought to myself, what? why would somebody that I hardly knew or didn't know well do that? And it kind of brought me back to when I was 4 years old, Taryn, and I was sitting on the curb in front of my parents' house. We lived across the street from a construction company. It was kind of a really weird one-way street with sort of industry on one side and houses on the other. And I would sit on that curb and I would watch these dump trucks and these other types of big trucks come into the yard in the afternoon. And I was just blown away. I just loved trucks, and I was blown away by the smell and the smoke and the noise and all of that. And I, I, I think there was a seed, an entrepreneurial seed, like planted in me then when I was 4 years old, and it just sat there dormant for all those years. And then this thing happened, and Butch came along, and ironically, he'd been a farmer most of his life, and I look at it now and I think Butch is the one who sprinkled, whatever I needed on me to start that seed actually germinating instead of hibernating. So we started a business together. Like I said, when I was 26, and we, ultimately, a short story is we built that business for 22 years and sold it in 2015. And a couple of years later, I was fortunate to connect with some other people, and we started another similar business, and we sold that a couple of months ago. And so, I've had these two sort of startup experiences that have ultimately turned out okay. The first one was really the sort of the canvas that I used for my new book, which is called Ownership: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. And so, and it really takes you through the stages, or at least the stages that I feel a lot of entrepreneurs, especially some who've had some success early on, go through. But outside of that, I started podcasting about 3 years ago, just because I was looking for something creative to do after I sold my first business, and I didn't know what else I could do that was creative. So I started podcasting, and I've got a couple hundred episodes done now. And outside of that, I try to be a good person. I try to influence people positively. I do a lot of investing in startup companies because I want to support entrepreneurs. I mean, that's why I think I'm here, is to be a good person and to help support entrepreneurs, because I just feel like one, they need it, two, they deserve it, and three, some of them end up changing the world in a very positive way for a lot of us. And why wouldn't I want to support that?
And that passion of yours in terms of supporting entrepreneurs comes through for sure in your podcast and in your book. And I love that about you, is that really genuine desire to give back and to support and to help people with the tools to be able to do so, and the new mindset. And I want to talk about your book for a second, because in the title you wrote, How Becoming Selfish Helped Me to Get Unstuck. Please tell us that, because I think that it's one of those words, the word selfish, that so many of us have such a negative connotation associated with. And it's so fascinating to me. I love that you put it right on the front page, on the front cover of your book. Tell us a little bit about what being selfish meant to you in this entrepreneurial journey, and specifically about how being selfish gave you the tools and the power to create a really successful business.
Sure. Yeah. Selfish is a horrible word.
It really is.
It's the last word anyone wants attached to them in most cases, and me included. And I don't say it, I don't use the word to be, sort of out there, or whatever the right word is for being controversial or anything. It's just, I found it to be real. And I'll tell you what I meant by it. I was raised, and I tried my best to be the kind of leader that Jim Collins, ultimately described as a level 5 leader. Selfless leader, a selfless leader, a humble, selfless leader who put everybody first, right? That's sort of the model or the ideal that's out there. And I did that. And I like doing that. And I thought it made me valuable. And I thought that's what everybody wanted from me. And I thought that's what everybody appreciated from me. And I think they probably did. But when I found myself, I split the book up into 4 stages and I call them dream, grind, break, and breakthrough. And when
Yeah.
I found myself in the break stage, in this place I call the valley of uncertainty, I had to do a lot of thinking. And what occurred to me over time, it was not an epiphany, but what occurred to me over time was that I was in this place that I hated, this valley of uncertainty where I felt broken and I wanted to quit and I wanted to turn back and I wanted to do all the things that an entrepreneur should not be wanting to do. And it occurred to me that while I was there thinking, oh, who's responsible for this? Who can I blame? Who can I complain to? Who's going to help me out of this thing? Who's the person that's going to come along and just save me? It occurred to me that I was there because that's exactly where I designed myself to be. I was sort of the architect of my own misery, right? And I started thinking about, well, why did I design it this way? Why did I get exactly what I was hoping for? And if I was able to design something that got me exactly what I was hoping for, could I design something else that got me out of what I was in and took me a place where I couldn't see now? And that's where the selfish thing came in. And what I mean by being selfish is if I don't know where I'm going, if I don't know what my future is, if I don't own my future like it's a piece of property, then how can I possibly expect, one, to ever get there, two, to be able to explain it to people so that they understand and are hopefully are willing to support it, and three, how can I give them the autonomy to actually do the things that are necessary in order for us to create the future that we want? And so that's what I mean by being selfish. What I ultimately discovered for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people, but I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. But for me, I could never be really selfless until I got selfish first. And I mean, if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I probably would have sold my business way too early and sold it because I was unhappy with it, not because it was super successful.
Mm.
And I'd be kicking myself with regret, thinking, well, what if, but I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. I could not be a selfless leader until I got selfish about what I wanted. And that's what I did.
And embedded in that perspective is accountability as well.
Sure. Yeah. Good point. Because the whole time I was being selfless, I was using that as an excuse not to actually do my job. I'm supposed to be the leader. I'm supposed to be the person that's showing everybody where we're going. And instead, I was putting what everybody needed at the moment in front of that. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's look, I'm doing a great job. Everybody loves it. I'm the hero, right?
Yeah.
No, I was just putting off what I should be doing. It was getting in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. I think it opens up such a fantastic conversation. And speaking as a woman, a mom, as a daughter, and also someone in healthcare, many of my listeners happen to be in healthcare as well. We consider ourselves to be in such a service oriented industry that we always are trying to take care of others first. And as you know, in the entrepreneurial world, that's a big buzzword too, is if you're unhappy, go out and do something nice for someone else, be of service to someone. And although the value in that is enormous, there's a misconception there about the responsibility that we have for ourselves and for our own businesses.
I heard you talking on one of your podcasts about boundaries. And as you were talking about boundaries and you were talking about how you had to redesign your practice hours and do these other things, it sounded to me like selfish. Now, it wasn't, it was a much better word, maybe boundaries are a much better word, but that's what it sounded like. Like if I'm going to create the freedom I want, or I'm going to create the business I want, or I'm going to create whatever it is that you were talking about, I can't do it by letting what everybody else wants come in front of what I want. Now, when you first start a business, like when you're in the dream stage, you don't think about any of that stuff because that's what you're there for. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody wants me. Somebody's going to write me a check, or somebody's going to take,
You're hungry.
yeah,
Yeah.
or somebody's going to let me be their patient.
Yeah.
Yes. And that hunger that starts there, it, at least for me, again, it starts moving into this grind phase where the dream's starting to wear off. You don't even remember what you're doing anymore, because all the things are just coming at you all the time. You're just taking them, doing. And all of a sudden this, this exhilaration you had for the same kinds of things in the dream stage are now, just grinding, wearing you down, and you start to dislike what you created. So anyway, just I liked when you were talking about boundaries. It made a lot of sense to me.
So, what advice do you have there? So, go back to what you were just talking about, because I think so many people find themselves, in your word, stuck in that place where they've had the dream, put it into action, and now they're grinding. And the grind, exactly as you said so articulately, begins to take away from who you are. And there's that moment where so many people speak about this moment where you don't start to recognize yourself anymore. You feel so disconnected from the dream, from the adventure, from the passion. So, what advice do you give to entrepreneurs who are finding themselves in that place in their career, stuck in the grind?
Yeah. Well, if you're already there, the best advice that I can give anybody is it's okay, it's common, and now you got to start looking for a way out of it. Try not to think about being there as, why did this happen to me? Just look at it and take responsibility for it and say, this happened to me because of me, because of the way I designed it. And if that was the case, then I can easily pivot, shift, like my book, shift into something else. So I can design something that's different than what I have. And I'm okay. I'd be okay with the fact that you're there. It's common. It's all right. But accept that you can change it. You got exactly what you wanted. If you're in the dream stage still, I would recommend that as soon as you feel like the things that you're doing are not giving you energy any longer, start redesigning right then. Instead of thinking this is just normal and it's something I'll work myself through and it'll be better in a month or so, I would recommend that you start redesigning, right away. Pay attention to what your brain and your body are telling you. That's definitely the mistake I made. I thought, well, I'm just going to keep working harder, and I'm just going to dig deeper, because that's what you do to get out of things, right? And as an entrepreneur, you don't have to dig deeper. There are lots of people who can help you dig. You don't have to dig out all by yourself. As soon as you start to feel it, start the process of redesigning. And if you can't do it yourself, which a lot of us can, then find someone who can ask you the right questions and who can help you, because you don't want to wait till you're broken to get help. That's what I did, and it can work, but why go through all that pain? And why put yourself and your business through all that? And why put your mind through thinking that it doesn't need to be having?
Another aspect of being in that stuck space is the belief system that when I get to a certain level of financial security or independence or wealth or abundance, that then my options will be more something that's more aligned with what I want, or make me happier, or bring me happiness. More money will be able to bring me more happiness, freedom, choice. And, in your journey, you're talking about at one point you had grown this enormously valuable, financially valuable business that then could be sold. But at what point is that money enough? Number one, is it ever enough to replace all the other needs? And what advice do you give for people who are putting their hopes on that financial number, or maybe they don't even have a number. Maybe that goalpost keeps moving to a higher and higher number. But has money ever done that for you with your experience? Has money ever been that saving grace in that stuck place?
I guess I would answer by saying that money matters. Uh, Money can help you with a lot of situations that not having money can't. But I don't equate that, have the options that money provides. I don't equate that with happiness, because they're not the same. Being able to do things doesn't mean that you are necessarily happy about doing them. I think, and this is a trap, you, I'm sure you know a lot of entrepreneurs too. You get to a certain spot, you get a certain house, you lease a certain car, and everybody thinks you bought it for cash. You do all of these things, and then your your mind shifts, and you're no longer worried about, or you're no longer thinking all the time about growing, and how to increase your capabilities and do all those things. You're thinking about what you could lose
Yeah.
if the world were to stop tomorrow. And you can't lose happiness once you have it. You, it's harder. You can lose stuff. And if you attach stuff to happiness, I think for most people, that's a short game. That's not a long game. So I never try to think about money when I'm building a business. I always try to think about, the better that we can serve our customers and clients, the better that we can serve our team, the better that we can serve our community, the better we'll do. I don't know what that means, better, but the better we'll do. And yeah, I guess there's all kinds of ways to approach it, Taryn, but that's how I feel about it.
What we need right now is to leverage happiness in the workplace. If you're a leader or manager struggling with retaining team members and frustrated with the current staffing shortage, group coaching for your team is your solution. Christina Unrein and I have partnered together to build a 10-week group coaching workshop for your business, focused directly on increasing happiness and positivity in the workplace. How do we do this? We use the awesome systems you already have in place and support your team members directly with tools for a mindset shift for awareness of their individual power to own their own happiness. Learn how to cultivate accountability for happiness in your team members and guide them with the tools to own their empowerment at work. Turning around workplace culture starts with individuals, and Christina and I are here for you. Email me at taryn@thebizofhappiness.com if you are ready to make workplace happiness your competitive advantage. So in your new entrepreneurial journey, in this new venue that you're in, where are you stuck right now that needs a shift?
Yeah, good point. So I mentioned that, we just sold a business a couple of months ago, and I was just telling my friends that there's two things that are going on in my mind. First of all, I'm free. So freedom means you have options instead of obligations, right? So I'm free. So that's why you want to be an entrepreneur, is for freedom. That's why you want to be anything, is so that you are free so I have freedom. And then on the other hand, I kind of have this sense of a little bit of lost. Not because I'm lost and I have no idea, but I feel like I should have a plan right now, today, for the very next thing that I'm going to do, or I should already be doing it. And I know that's, nuts, and it's not necessary and all of that, but I feel a little bit like that because you get used to every day having some meaning in your life that relates to a business. Now, you have lots of other meanings in your life, and I have plenty of those, thankfully. But meaning as it relates to a business, I don't have, a lot of that right now. So those are the two things that are kind of going on in my mind. And I got all my boxes and stuff from my office dropped off at my house, and I looked at them all and I was like, okay. So I don't have a place to put these boxes right now. What am I going to do? So that's the lost part of it.
Yeah.
Um, but no one needs to feel sorry for me. It's just the way my brain kind of works.
I think I'm so glad, and I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that with us. Thank you. It reminds me a lot of a documentary I just saw on an airplane recently with Michael Phelps in terms of the mental health concerns that are now with the Olympians, that's all coming to light now. And something very similar, it strikes me very similar in this like intense pursuit of, the gold medal of these Olympic trials. And then it ends and you're left with this kind of emptiness. And yes, nobody feels sorry for the person who won the gold medal at the Olympics. Nobody feels sorry for Michael Phelps. But that's the point, is that there's this inner fulfillment that you get out of the drive, out of the excitement of the pursuit, out of the goal, out of the adventure, and then some kind of an emptiness that happens at the achievement of it. So I think it's something that many, many people can relate to. What now? Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're a young person, like an Olympian, for example, your life is so dominated by the pursuit of that goal that there's probably not a lot of time or effort spent on the what's next. But for most humans, there's plenty of time for us to be thinking, and not what's next, but what else?
Yeah.
What else do I want to become good at, or what else do I want to experience, or whatever the end of that you put on the what else. And I think it's very important to have some of those what else's, and I have plenty. But it's important to have those what else's, because just like in sports, you hear lots of entrepreneurs, they sell a business, and where do they end up? They end up at a bar, or they end up gambling, or they end up, free time for an entrepreneur is dangerous. You don't want you want free time to rejuvenate. You don't want free time to have no purpose.
And I love what you said. It's something we all dream of. When you're in the thick of it, all you want is free time. So I can completely understand. I think the same is true, when you're talking about letting go of one dream to step in front of another. It's the same thought process. When something's not fulfilling you anymore, and giving yourself permission to think outside the box, this fear of what else, this fear of a different identity prevents a lot of people from allowing themselves to move on. Keeps people stuck.
Yeah. It sure does. And I'm not here to discount that at all as being easy to jump past. It's not. But the easier you start getting prepared to jump past it, I think the better off you are. When you look at the most successful athletes after their careers, they weren't waiting until their career was over before they put one thought into what happens after. While they were in the thick of it, they were laying the seeds for what's after. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us.
So your book, Ownership, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. Excellent. I just started digging into it, and already I'm in love. I'm enjoying it so much. So thank you for that. So I highly recommend that. And the other thing that I've been listening to is some of your podcasts, How Did Happen, the How Did Happen podcast. So for our listeners, please check it out. You've interviewed some really fascinating, really successful people in their worlds as well. And I've loved listening to the interviews, and you ask some really insightful questions. And I was wondering, from your experience in this podcasting world, what has been the most interesting connection that you've put, and if you've made a connection between these extremely successful people in their arenas? Has there been something that tends to run through the mindset of all these extremely successful people? Is there some way that they look at life, or a commonality that you've picked up on?
Yes. I'll highlight a few.
Great.
I haven't interviewed or have a conversation with anyone yet who had something handed to them on a silver platter and just you ran with it. That just, I mean, those stories get told sometimes, but I haven't done that. So all of these people have had some path that maybe they didn't solely create, because maybe, you know, everybody gets a hand or whatever along the way, but they, um, you know, they had something they wanted to accomplish, or they had their mind open to something appearing that they wanted to accomplish, and then when they saw it, they did something about it. So I say, and what I mean, so my point in that is they're not much different than anyone else walking the face of the earth. They you know, everybody has the skill set to know or be on the lookout for something that would interest them. It's just that not everybody, one, sees it, and or two, when they see it, actually, you know, goes down the path. So I'd say that's one thing. Two, I haven't. You use the term humble at the beginning of this. I haven't met many people on my podcast who aren't, you know, pretty humble about what's happened to them. They're not people who are, you know, when you meet super successful people and they're not like, well, let me tell you how I did it. And they're like, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
There are some of those people out there. There's a lot of people on the internet selling you how to be successful that are like that. But I don't meet many people who actually are,
Hmm.
who are like that. 3, giving. People are willing to give what they know to help other people get what they may not know. And
Hmm.
I'm talking give it. This is like, listen to me. This is how I did it. You can follow it if you'd like, if it makes sense to you. It's free. You know, it's just, they just want to help people. And I guess the fourth thing is, they're always looking for, they're always looking for how to become better, how to be better, how to be more impactful, how to, you know, always working on themselves.
Hmm.
Like, you know, there's entrepreneurs, successful people, they don't know, they don't have everything figured out, Taryn. You know, they may, you know, people might put that sort of label on them, but they're struggling through life every day trying to figure out all kinds of things. But they're always looking for, how can I be better? What's the next thing I can try? Who can I talk to that could help me? And all of those kinds of things. So I'd say those are 4 things that I found are common amongst the people that I've had the opportunity to spend some time with.
It's interesting because in that, how can I be better, is embedded that humility that you were talking about. In order to want to be better, you have to admit that you're not. You're not the best. And, you know, I was thinking as you were talking about the humility aspect of how that also cultivates resilience and ability to face failure. Because if you're humble enough to admit that you're going to fail, you just welcome it and allows you the opportunity to learn to overcome it instead of feeling like you have all the tools to be able to face everything. And then when something comes at you out of the blue, you're floored because you weren't prepared for it. So how important do you think humility is in general? You mentioned it is a part of the people you've interviewed, but do you think it's an integral part of facing adversity?
Well, so I think it helps because I don't know if integral, because I've seen people and read about people who've pushed through adversity without humility.
That's true. And I guess we have many examples of that in real life.
Yeah, I just read The Splendor and the Vile, which is a book about Hitler, or not Hitler, Churchill's first year as prime minister. And I think, like, in that book, Churchill, he was not humble. But he was exactly what was needed, at least if, you know, that's the message of the book, what was needed during that first year in war. What I would say from my own experience is that when you have real adversity, and I don't mean when the sales numbers didn't hit this month, but when you have real adversity, a fire, a death, you know, you're half your team walks out the door, whatever it is, you don't know why. you don't know. You don't have the answers to all of those things. And if you try to approach the rest of your team or the people around you or whatever as if you know exactly what's happening, why it's happening, what should be done, people are going to like, you know, they'll look at you funny and they'll think about you funny because people, I think, react much better when you say, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to get out of this, but here's the thing. Tomorrow, we're going to show up for work. We're going to get together and we're going to start talking about this and we're going to figure it out because we always figure it out.
Mm.
And that's when you say, you know, I need your help. Don't look, you know. And so I think it's, in my experience, it's unless somebody is, you know, you're in a war or somebody is dying and someone needs to take, there's no time to say, I don't know, I just have to do, then of course there's a purpose for that. But in business, those times are rare. And I think the more times you can still be confident and humble at the same time. I mean, it's not
Absolutely.
like, you know, people might say, well, that guy's so humble, he must not have any confidence. Well, no, those things are not, they're not the same. But being confident doesn't mean you know everything.
Mm.
The most confident people, I think, are really good at saying, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
But yeah. So does that answer your question? Is that?
It does. It does. I think there's an interesting conversation there. And I'm so glad that you followed that up with how humility does not mean lack of confidence. And being confident doesn't mean you can't be humble. I think there's also a great amount of authenticity in a leader. That authenticity matters, and especially nowadays it's becoming more and more apparent of how valuable authenticity is, and embedded in authenticity is humility as well, you know, being able to be authentic with yourself, and then bringing that to your team as a leadership skill. Mike, what do you think is your superpower, your personal superpower?
I am, so some people would say, you know, like in Traction or other things, they call you a visionary, you know, and I'm a little uncomfortable with the word visionary, but I can see sometimes I can see things that are going to happen or should be happening before, or that I could help make happen before other people do. And that helps me. That's an advantage. I don't
That's a
know what to
great
call
one.
that, but
Yeah, that's a superpower if ever I've heard of one. That's awesome. What is your definition of happiness?
my definition of happiness is that I can wake up every day and I can go about my life and there's not one regret, you know, that I have for what I'm doing, who I'm around, where I am, um, who I'm interacting with. I'd say if I'm doing all of those things, I can't help but be happy.
Has there been a time in your life when you've had regret?
So there have been a lot of times in my life, Taryn, that I would rather have not had. I think for me, when I use the term regret, it's sort of like, you know, man, if I could change that, but I don't have that's not a superpower of mine to change things that have happened to me. So I just try to stay away from regret. But things that I've had so many things happen to me that I wish I would have figured out a way not to have happened to me. But since I can't, I just have to accept that everything that's happened to me is part of who I am. And if it's happened, I can, the only thing I can do is use it to get better.
Mm.
And that's easier said than done, but that's how I like to think about it. But as I mentioned to you, I wasn't always that way when I was in the valley of uncertainty. I was looking for someone to blame. I was holding grudges. This was not my fault. And I wanted to prove it. And that took a lot of energy that I could have used much more positively and probably gotten a lot further in life had I done so. So it's not a regret, but I wish I wish that hadn't been the road that I had chosen.
Well, I honor you, Mike, because I really value your story and I love this mission that you have now in terms of supporting other entrepreneurs to walk through a more intentional path and not be subject to getting stuck in those moments with those difficulties. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you for your incredible podcast. I can't wait to see what else you do next if you write another book or whatever is going to be coming down the line with your new freedom of time. Do you have any projects in the making right now other than just continuing with this incredible podcast?
No. I mean, I'm continuing with the podcast. Of course, I'm right now. I'm working a lot on the book because books they're a lot of work to not just to write, but then to get out and do.
Yes.
So I'm fortunate that I actually have some additional time to do that now because I need it. And I am very certain that through this process and through the other processes that I have with, trying to support entrepreneurs with different ways, there'll be lots of things that come my way, Taryn. So and I'll be grateful for every one of them.
Awesome. So before I ask you our final question, Mike, I am going to leave all the links in the show notes for my audience to find you. But if someone wants to follow you, and definitely I mentioned your book and your podcast, but what are your social media links in case somebody's driving, listening to this interview? How can people find you?
Sure. Well, you can find me on my website, which is Mike Malatesta, and that's, if you're driving, you don't need to write this down. But listen carefully. Hit the thing that puts it back 30 seconds or whatever on the podcast. Malatesta. So that's a great place to find me. You can find all my stuff there. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can just type my name in, Mike Malatesta. I will likely come up, and you can, engage me there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your story and your vulnerability. I appreciate it, and I'm so excited to have made this connection with you and hopefully stay in touch. I would love for you to leave our audience with one visionary word or phrase or insightful comment on an impact that they can have as entrepreneurs in terms of a piece of advice for those of us out there who are looking to serve and to support our communities. What is your greatest advice for those of us who are trying to do so?
So I think it was Jim Rohn that said something like, you're the product of or the byproduct of the 5 people you spend the most time with in your life. I think that was his quote, and it's not exact, but I like to say that, and I think this is very valuable, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you want to be around people who are what I call winding up instead of people who are winding down. So people who are winding up are people who are willing to push themselves. They are always looking for a new opportunity, not just for themselves, but to help other people. And they're looking to grow themselves, right? Their education, their impact, all of those things. People who are winding down are doing the opposite. They are, typically they're blaming someone else for where they are. They don't see a future that's bigger than their past or their present. They want other people to commiserate with them in that thinking. And I just don't want to put myself around those kind of people. So that's I don't know if there's anything valuable there, but that's how I feel.
I love it. I love that perspective and that idea of winding up as opposed to winding down. Super, super. Well, I'm so grateful to be in understanding and a meeting of someone like you who is always bringing yourself that way in terms of looking for new adventures and winding up to better yourself. So thank you for being a part of that sphere for me. I appreciate it.
Hey, you've got a great podcast here, Taryn. I really am grateful for having the chance to come on today.
Super.
And congratulations on your success as well. I love, you know, doctors, physicians who become entrepreneurs, they impress the heck out of me. So
Yeah. Very cool. There's an incredible audience. And thank you to all of you in our audience who have joined us for today's podcast. I was so eager to introduce you to Mike, and I'm glad that now you know how to find him as well. And we look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye bye.